So this is the first day of our end-of-year retreat dedicated to our teacher, Luang Chah. Most people who know the name Luang Chah or Ajahn Chah, they associate that with practicing Dhamma. Monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen, nowadays all over the world, practicing the Dhamma, because that's how he lived. He lived and practiced the Dhamma and encouraged us to practice. For anyone lucky enough to have met him in person, it tends to be what you think of when you think of him. It's the commitment to the practice of Dhamma for liberation, for realization of the Four Noble Truths. But even if you didn't meet him in person, you probably read some of his books, heard some of his talks, can read about him online, even see him or hear him online. And occasionally maybe meet teachers who have lived and practiced with him. So you can get some idea of what he taught, what he encouraged, the kind of attitudes he encouraged, the reflections he brought up regularly when teaching. But at the same time, we always say that when people say, what did Ajahn Chah teach? We tend to say, well, he didn't teach any particular technique. Because a lot of people go on a meditation retreat. First thing that they want to know is, what is the technique or the method? So Ajahn Chah didn't really have a particular method as such. Sometimes when people ask this question, what is your technique, method, he would say, well, I use the method of the Buddha, because he's a student of the Buddha. So what is the method of the Buddha? Well, the method of the Buddha is the Four Noble Truths. Take that as a starting point to study, learn, and then to practice. So the dukkha, suffering, there is stress, there is suffering. That's to be known, understood. Second Noble Truth, the cause of suffering. What is the cause of suffering? Craving, attachment, becoming, leads to suffering. And that's to be abandoned. Third Noble Truth, the cessation of suffering. Suffering can cease, can end, one can go beyond it. And that's something you have to realize for yourself through your practice. Not something just to believe in or wish for, but actually to be realized, to be known and realized. And the fourth Noble Truth is the practice that leads to the realization of the end of suffering. The Noble Eightfold Path, the 8 factors, and then all the different aspects. That's something to be practiced. That's where we get the word practice. Probably a slightly more accurate word would be developed. It has to be developed or cultivated. So all the Buddha's teachings fit into these Four Noble Truths, like all the footprints of the animals in the forest fit into the elephant's footprint. And Ajahn Chah didn't really stray very far from explaining one aspect or another of these Four Noble Truths. He certainly was creative and imaginative in his teaching, in the way he taught. He could be very practical, down to earth, but he could also point to the very highest Dhamma, Nibbana, the end of suffering. He could talk about very profound things as much as very ordinary things. But he could present the Dhamma in a very clear, easy to understand way for most people, I think. Whether they're ready to understand or not, that would be a different question. Some people come in contact with a great teacher like Ajahn Chah or even the Buddha, but they're not ready for the Dhamma. However much the Buddha would teach or Ajahn Chah would teach, that person might stay the same. Occasionally even go backwards. And that just points out the nature of the human mind. We can go up, improve and learn many things and grow in the Dhamma, or we can go backwards, we can slip backwards. We can get lost in the world, lost in suffering, change our behavior maybe for the worse. Ajahn Chah used to say, people's minds are like water. If you leave water, it always flows down to the lowest point. That's why our monastery here never floods, even in heavy rain, because it's on a hill, so all the water flows downhill. People's minds are like that. If they're not trained and they're not cultivating this Noble Eightfold Path, they tend to go downhill to the worst kind of thoughts, to the wrong views, and experience more suffering because of it. So we have to train the mind, we have to develop this path. And that was one of Ajahn Chah's big things, getting people to practice, to see the need for practice and give them encouragement and ways how to practice. To bring the mind up again, to bring that water back, or at least stem the flow, stop the water flowing downhill. It's another one of his many amazing similes. He said, when you practice the Dhamma, you're like making a dam to stop the water flowing away. Once you've made your dam, you make a wall of earth or rock, then you can hold the water. And then you can use that water for useful things. You can use the water to drink or wash or irrigate your crops. You've got a supply of water. He even refined that teaching. He said, but you also need a spillway. Like when you have a dam, you also build a little overflow, a spillway for maybe when there's heavy rain and the dam fills right up. You have to have an overflow so the water can escape when it gets too full. Otherwise you risk the dam wall breaking. Now practice can be like that. The spillway of the practice or the overflow is you have to be able to reflect on what you're doing. And sometimes we try too hard in the practice, so we kind of fill our mind up with desire for results in the practice. We try very hard, we push ourselves, we go against all our craving and attachment, and push hard. But if we don't have that overflow, then maybe we just get so miserable and fed up, we suffer too much, then we don't want to practice anymore. So sometimes the spillway is just knowing how to relax a little bit when we're trying too hard, just as we have to know how to push a bit harder when we're too relaxed. And that's something you have to learn for yourself through your own practice. You can't always rely on someone else to tell you, or you can't just look at other people and compare with them all the time, because other people may be physically stronger or weaker than you, other people may be more advanced in their practice or less advanced than you. They'll be different from you, whatever. So you can get a small guideline from other people, but the main thing is you've got to watch yourself. So if you're practicing so hard, you're becoming really stressed and frustrated and ready to explode, then maybe you need to use that overflow. If you're trying too hard so that you get a headache, some people meditate and make themselves get a headache, or they make themselves ill or something. Or maybe you need that overflow then. But if you don't try at all, you don't put any effort in at all, well, nothing will improve, nothing will change. Maybe even things will get worse. But like water, we have to learn how to harness the water, make it useful to us. Like our mind, it has to be something you train or you tame so that you can use it to learn the Dhamma and see the Dhamma, realize the Dhamma. And that's one of the values of meditation retreat. You come into a quiet place, the forest, where everyone else is practicing too. There's not many distractions. You get support. You don't have to worry about the food, the place, the accommodation, the routine. You just follow along. Everything is provided for you. For that we can be grateful to everyone who's built the monastery, and then to the organizers of the retreat who help provide you with food and the assistance you need. But then you just have to sit back and practice. So all you have to do is practice. And you can use this opportunity to train your mind in the Noble Eightfold Path to realize the Four Noble Truths. So yes, there will be some difficulties and challenges, sometimes from the weather, sometimes from tents that break down in the middle of the night. That's happened before. I think it was last year or the year before, we had a bit of a storm and somebody's tent collapsed in the middle of the night. They had to abandon ship. It can happen. But probably the biggest suffering is just your own mind, isn't it? All the thoughts. We have to learn to practice mindfulness, pay more attention to our own mind, bring up the mindfulness and set aside, let go of some of those cravings and attachments that bring us suffering. As we just chanted the Bhaddekarata Sutta, teaching the Buddha once gave to the monks about how to bring your mind to the present moment, because that's the place of Dhamma practice. The place of suffering is where you're always getting lost in the past. You're always reliving the past, wishing things would be different or wishing you could get back to the past, or getting lost in the future, wanting things for the future, wanting things to be a certain way, wanting to get things. The Buddha pointed out, when your mind is either lost in the past or lost in the thoughts about the future, it's no longer mindful in the present moment. It's just lost in the stories. It's no longer bright. We say shining night of prosperity, or a night of radiant prosperity, or an auspicious night, Bhaddekarata. What makes a night auspicious, or bringing your mind to the present moment, having mindfulness and knowing your own body and mind, or knowing your own 5 khandhas. It's the way the Buddha talked about human being, body, feelings, perceptions and memories, thoughts, and sense consciousness, the 5 khandhas. So if you're lost in the past, you're kind of lost thinking about how your khandhas were before. So number 1 is probably your body, isn't it? Oh, I wish I was 10 years younger. Or I wish I was 20 years younger. Rupa khandha. dreaming about how your body used to be. Maybe you used to be good looking and you've lost it. Or you used to be strong and healthy and you've lost it. So you're kind of longing for the past, to get that body back. Or sometimes people are going to the gym, they want to get their body back in shape. But it's getting lost in the past, and it causes a suffering, because the past is not the present, is it? It's gone. You have to accept that. Or thinking about things you did in the past, some things you did were not very good, so you're unhappy about that, but you can't change it. Or maybe you did very good things, but you've also moved on from there, and you can't get back to those good things. The pleasures, the successes, the happinesses of the past, you can't bring them back now in the future, in the present, because the past is the past, it's gone. So it all centers around these 5 khandhas, identifying with them as a self, me, so my khandhas in the past, how they were, good or bad. A lot of our suffering is remembering past traumatic experiences, bad things, carrying them around. But it's the sense of self that is the problem. Craving and attachment gives rise to becoming, gives rise to a sense of self. You could say my khandhas in the past, or you just say myself in the past. But it's that strong identification that brings suffering. Same with the future. My khandhas, how I want them to be in the future, what I want from the future. Fears come from what we don't want in the future, so nobody wants old age, sickness and death, and yet it's the one thing that's going to happen, because 5 khandhas are impermanent. They change, and particularly the rupa khandha, the body gets older. With old age you get sickness, and you ultimately get death. So we have fears and anxieties about that. Or just other things, fears, anxieties about what other people are going to say, or the people we love, what's going to happen to them, what's going to happen to our wealth, our money. Will I have any money? Maybe you have no money now, so can I get any money? That's why Sangha has a head start. Monks have a head start. In the past, no money. Yesterday, no money. Today, no money. Tomorrow, no money. Easy. End of story. So that takes half the suffering of life away. That's why monks can be so relaxed and happy. No money worries. Monks still have a body though, so they still have to deal with that. With the body you also get lust, desire, pleasure. I get a lot of pleasure with this body, sight, sound, taste, smell, touch. We get sexual desire, we get food desire, we get desire for pleasure, all kinds of desire based around the body, and then the feelings that come from that. So often we're missing pleasures we had before that we don't have now, or we're imagining and wanting pleasure in the future that we haven't got yet. But if you're either in the past or the future, you're not with the present moment, so you suffer. You're not content, not aware. So when you're getting lost in the past or lost in the future, you're not with the shining light of prosperity. It's no longer auspicious. You're back with the mind that's following craving and attachment. But if you practice mindfulness, walking meditation, sitting meditation, being mindful through the day as much as you can, then you have a chance to make that day auspicious. When the Buddha talked about an auspicious night of shining prosperity, actually night in that sense means day and night, 24 hours. In those days they would count a day, a cycle of day and night as a night, so they said one night. Radri, And the Buddha would praise somebody who lived as though they just lived for one night, meaning one 24-hour cycle, mindful throughout the 24 hours, morning, middle of the day, night time, always mindful. Living as though they just lived for one night, one day, one night. Because if you're always living in the past, always living in the future, you suffer and you tend not to be mindful. How often do we talk about, when my meditation gets good in the future, when I get samadhi, maybe already you're planning your next retreat, haven't even finished this one yet. Not content in the present moment, already moving on to the next thing, next best thing. Or you see Nibbana as something in the future, or next life when I attain Nibbana. Just living for the future and for various kinds of happiness and pleasure in the future. Or sometimes being upset about the past, my past was no good, I don't have any barami, I didn't do enough practice, I haven't meditated enough, my past is no good, I made too much bad karma in the past, so I can't meditate now. Either way, you're no longer in the present moment, no longer with the night of shining prosperity, more with the night of endless mental proliferation. What does mental proliferation, thinking a lot, do to the mind? It makes the mind go dark. It's like turning the lights off. Mindfulness brightens the mind. Endless thinking without any mindfulness makes the mind go dark. Just watch when you meditate, whatever the posture, sitting, walking, even lying down before you go to bed or when you wake up. When your mind moves away from the present moment, the sati is gone, the sampajanya is gone, what happens? So you're just lost in another train of thought. And you may think you know what you're doing and you're aware and you're present. But if you're lost in a train of thought, you're not going to be aware of the present moment now. Now you're lost in those thoughts and the feelings, the emotions that come with them. Your mind has gone from the present moment. So it's no longer mindful, no longer able to realize the Four Noble Truths in that moment. No longer able to see clearly suffering, its cause, realize the end of suffering, or cultivate the path. When mindfulness is gone, you can't do that. That's why we practice a lot of present moment attention, mindfulness, clear comprehension, and effort to do that, effort to bring up the mindfulness in the present moment. You don't have to get anything. And we always think, I've got to get some special state, some special experience, I have to see something. You don't have to. Just know your own body and mind in the present moment is enough. Out of that, you'll understand the Four Noble Truths. When you notice when things start becoming difficult, maybe your mind is not peaceful, maybe you got some pain in your legs, there's something making you distracted or putting you in a mood. In that moment, you can't see the Four Noble Truths. The mind is too distracted. Different moods come up. If they take you away from the present moment, that's it. Until you regain mindfulness, you can't see suffering, its cause, the end of suffering, the path leading to the end of suffering. That's gone, isn't it? When you re-establish mindfulness, you bring your mind back to the breath or to any other meditation object, to Buddha. Then you can start cultivating the path, then you can start seeing the Four Noble Truths. bring the mind back to the present moment, drop the past, drop the future. Then you have a chance to really understand Dhamma. See things as Dhamma. People always think the problem is I'm thinking too much, too many thoughts. These thoughts are like an enemy, they're like a problem for me. It's more not being mindful of the thought. It's the important thing. You suffer because you're not mindful. So then your mind gets caught up, entangled in those thoughts. Becomes agitated. The Buddha's words were agitated, shaky. We become shaky when we get lost in trains of thought. We're no longer able to concentrate or know ourselves nor concentrate the mind. It's another part of the title, but Ekakarata Sutta, but Eka means one-pointedness. It's what the Buddha was encouraging us to develop, one-pointedness, meaning mindfulness. Knowing from moment to moment, the mind is one-pointed. When you get lost in a train of thought, you're not one-pointed, you're distracted. So the mind becomes fuzzy, agitated, shaky, can't concentrate, it's distracted. So then you can't really know the Four Noble Truths at that moment. So the Buddha was encouraging us, put a lot of effort into developing mindfulness from moment to moment, sitting meditation, walking meditation. Really make use of the time to practice, to do that. And if you lose your mindfulness, you're lost in another daydream or you're sleepy, it doesn't matter. As soon as you realize, you just start again. A practitioner on a meditation retreat, you have to be willing to start over and over again. You have to be very patient with the wandering mind, the moods, the pain, the pleasure, the things that distract us. Be very patient with that. And just be willing to keep starting again, over and over again. Back to the breath, back to Buddha. Learn to be happy, to delight in establishing mindfulness, establishing insight, seeing the changing nature of your thoughts and feelings. They're not sure, they're not permanent. Delight in that, then you will find it easy to practice. You delight in the practice. If you keep going with your negative thoughts, you'll say, oh, this practice is hard work, it's a chore, I'm no good, I can't do it. You'll turn yourself off. You'll make yourself not want to practice. So don't believe the negative thoughts. You have to learn to delight in bringing up mindfulness, keep going, bringing up effort, being patient with the distracted mind, patient with your attachments. When you notice yourself caught into a unskillful state of mind, just be patient with that, accept that. Oh, today I'm angry, today I'm worried, today I'm greedy. Just accept that. Don't get too caught up in it and start blaming yourself or judging, turning against yourself. Oh, I have too much greed, too much anger, too much this, too much that. Just establish mindfulness and know what's going on. Then you have a chance to let go. If you start blaming yourself for having too many kilesa, too much of this, too much of that, you only make things more complicated and you suffer more. And you suffer because you suffer. Dukkha because of dukkha. You get people who say, oh, I have too much anger. So every time they get angry, they notice that and they get angry because they're angry. And then they get angry because they got angry because they got angry. And often on and on it goes. You notice there'll be one defilement you're really focusing on. So if it's anger, then whenever greed comes up, you miss it because you're waiting for the anger. I'm going to get this anger, I'm going to clobber it, I'm going to stop it. So you miss your greed because you're working on the anger. Or you focus on greed, oh, I shouldn't take too much food, I shouldn't indulge, I shouldn't seek out too many pleasures, so I'm going to be very careful, very restrained. And then when anger comes up, you don't notice. It sneaks up on you because you're so focused on the greed. In the end, we're aiming to be more mindful. Make your mind an auspicious place by being more mindful. Then you can let go of whatever the defilement, whatever the attachment, get to know it. Make it not just an auspicious night, but an auspicious retreat for you. It's the end of the year. Do yourself some good. Let go of some greed, anger, delusion. Even if it's just one little bit of greed, anger, delusion, that's already good. That's made your retreat worthwhile. Something good. Makes it all worthwhile. Coming to stay here, stay in a tent, put up with some of the difficulties. It's all worthwhile if you can let go of a little or a lot of greed, anger and delusion. It means you're practicing the Dhamma, following the Buddha. That's what we're here for. So maybe for tonight I'll just say this much and we'll end the meeting, and then afterwards there'll be a little bit of we call monastery keeping, because we're not at home, so we don't call it housekeeping. We call it monastery keeping. So we'll end there.